This is Tony Verovan, and I am the CSIA Marketing Manager, and this is Talking Industrial Automation with CSIA. I'm sitting here with Steve Malyszko of Malisko Engineering. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Oh, thank you, Tony, and thank you to the audience who's going to listen to this or watch this.
Absolutely. We'll have this on audio, and we're starting a brand new podcast. So you're going to be episode 2, so you're right on the ground floor.
Great. Glad to do it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us here. Now, Malisko Engineering, we'll kind of go back and forward, and we'll maybe jump around here a little bit. But tell us about Malisko Engineering and where you're located and what your specialties are.
Okay, great, Tony. Well, Malisko Engineering, we're a certified CSIA integrator, a member of CSIA, and we started in 1994. Started small, and over the last 20-some years, we've grown organically, and we've grown our main offices here in St. Louis, Missouri. We also have offices in Denver, Colorado, and Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And our real focus in automation of the process industries. And by that, I mean food and beverage, pharmaceutical, life science, biologics, nutraceuticals, dairy, and brewing, and specialty chemicals. Those are the real specialties. In addition to really focusing on automation, we also have a lot of domain expertise. We have people who have spent years in specialty chemicals, spent years in nutritionals and pharmaceuticals and dairy, and not only have a background in terms of the automation, but also the process itself of those various verticals. And so what our clients have found over the past, especially the past several years, they say they like us because we have not only the technical expertise on the automation side, but then we couple that with the actual process knowledge that we gained from over the years from our various members having worked in those specific industries.
Great. Okay. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, kind of what you're specializing in. Sounds like you're more in the process side, or do you get in kind of in the manufacturing side as well, or?
Well, our real focus is on the process side, but many of these manufacturing plants, they also have utilities, air, compressed air, ammonia, CO2, electricity, boilers and such, which we also get into. But also to the packaging side, as well. But our real focus and the real niche that and this has been client driven. This hasn't been Malisko driven. Years ago, we weren't sure what we were going to really get into. But what happened was over the years, our clients told us, you know what, Steve, you guys are really good, and you are really good at the process, and you have the ability to go ahead and apply the science and technology of automation to our processes in a way that we haven't seen many people do before. So we really like what you do. Now, the other thing that we do, in addition, I mentioned we're pharmaceutical and life science and biologics and nutritionals. Well, those all come under the compliance of FDA. And one of the areas that we've also sort of morphed and become very, very good at over the years is in the area of computer system validation. And by that I mean computer system validation as it relates to the process in the automation systems. So when it comes to PLCs, when it comes to chart recorders, when it comes to historians, data logging, HMIs, MES, networks, security, cybersecurity, we've really kind of become very, very specialized and very, very competent at being able to adequately cover those for our clients that come under FDA compliance and FDA rules.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you mentioned a lot of, some cybersecurity issues and some of those sorts of challenges. What are some of the technical challenges that you see in processing versus factory automation?
Well, it's a good question. And what we've seen is there's with our clients that a number of clients through no fault of theirs, it's just the way that it's been throughout the years, is that they're behind the curve in terms of the technological platforms and what the technological platforms can do from say a network system or a security system, cybersecurity system. And so what happens a lot of times is that clients, particularly when it comes to networks and security, they don't know what they don't know. And usually what happens is, they'll go out, they'll buy, they'll buy, and it can, a lot of times cost is the driver, or low cost is the driver. So they'll end up going out and, buying what they perceive as the lowest cost solution, which they, in their minds, will solve their problems. What happens is, though, is as their systems grow, as their networks grow, as you get more and more people involved, as you get OEMs involved, as you get outside resources involved, what happens is all of a sudden they realize sometimes, unfortunately, an incident occurs. They find out that their security system isn't as robust. Security system doesn't stop the viruses. Security system doesn't stop the malware that comes in. And sometimes, and we've actually had this happen where something like this literally brings an entire plant down and shuts them down. And then all of a sudden, what happens is they may go through a 36 or 48 hour period where they can't make any product. And because, they've called us in, they've called other IT specialists in, and it takes their team, us, and other people 48 hours to get back up and running. Well, that's a lost opportunity. And they realize that, and then they say, well, we don't want to have that happen again. So it's then when they get the epiphany, and they get the revelation that, hey, we need to do something a lot better than what we've been doing in the past. And so so that becomes the point at which some clients finally get into the notion of, oh, we need good, robust security. We need a good, robust, secure network. We need to separate things. We need a DMZ. We need firewalls. And that's where sometimes we end up, finally going ahead and providing a complete solution. We try to avoid that by a lot of times trying to educate the client ahead of time and sort of do, maybe call it the fear of God, maybe call it fear of, hey, do you really want to take this chance? Some clients, for whatever reason, they decide from a business standpoint that it's worth taking the risk. We try to discourage it, but it happens nonetheless. So that in today's age of manufacturing automation, and whether that's process control, whether that's discrete parts manufacturing, even in automotive and other industries, that is a challenge for not only us, but probably the majority of integrators trying to convince their clients that, hey, you need to go ahead, spend the extra money, put in the security, put in the robustness, so that you can avoid those tragic downtime issues that have to do with cybersecurity and malware and viruses.
Why do you think security is such an issue in industrial systems? I mean, where's the real vulnerability? What should clients really look out for?
Well, again, great question, Tony, and it really is sort of dependent upon the industry. Now, of course, when we talk about the utilities, water, electricity, water treatment. Those are extremely vulnerable where if say, for instance, a malware or a virus were to get in, bad people can do really bad stuff to a bunch of us very, very quickly. They could take out the power grid. They could all of a sudden cause issues in the water treatment plant. I mean, there's, the list goes on and on. So there's a very, very particularly high profile public safety issue. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, though, even though the public safety is at risk, it may not be as much because what happens is under any manufacturing conditions, most manufacturing companies have their own QA, have their own testing people who make sure that a can of beer, a jar of baby food gets fully tested before it ever leaves, the shipping dock. But what can happen though in my scenario of what we did have about 5 or 6 years ago, a client who got some malware, got a virus into their system, completely shut down their entire plant. So what happened was they lost 2 full days of production. 2 full days of production in a plant that runs 6 different lines, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, runs up into the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is a major concern of anybody who runs a manufacturing plant. So with that said, their emphasis is more not just product safety and product quality, but also too, if they, is downtime and meeting orders and keeping their grocery stores, their supply chain happy. They're keeping their customers happy that they're meeting orders at a timely basis.
Got it. Okay, so let's shift gears here a little bit here. What are some of the most interesting or challenging projects that you've worked on? You've kind of maybe mentioned some stuff at a higher level, but what kind of makes you get out of bed every morning, and what kind of excites you about what you're working on right now?
Some of the challenging projects have been those where, and I would say especially over the last several years, where people, again, because of their own business needs, because they in their own right are marketing driven. There may be a client out there who is coming out with a brand new drug, and the drug's already gone through all the FDA testing. They've done all the trials. And FDA has given them the blessing. And all of a sudden now they know that the product needs to hit the doors. This may sound like a long way away. It has to hit the doors by, say, December of this year. And even though we're in January, it takes time to put everything in place, get all the equipment in place, get all the programming done, get all the testing, get all the validation done of the automation system. And so what happens is they say, oh, okay, it normally takes 2 years to get that done. We want it done in 4 months. So all of a sudden, what happens is that we take, we take could be a 1.5 year project and have to compress it down into 4 months. It's very doable, and we've been involved in having to do that, but it becomes an extreme challenge to go ahead and make sure that everything is done and done correctly and done, in this particular case, to meet FDA compliance. This, Tony, seems to be more these days the rule, not the exception. Clients are coming to us with major projects and saying, again, we need this product on the shelf. We've been guaranteed X square feet of shelf space, but we have to have the product on the grocery store shelf by day X. And then when you start backing up the schedule, you find out that they're asking you to do 9 months worth of work in about 3 months. And so a lot of times, and I think again in the integrator world, we're starting to see that becomes the rule and not the exception. So in other words, the challenging ones, I'm not saying I like doing that, but the reality is that in our industry these days, that almost has become, if you want the business, that's what you have to do: deliver in a shorter, faster time, and still do it within budget.
Right. So how do you communicate like reality maybe to a client who comes to you and says, make this nine month project management project into 3 months? And how can you coach them so as they're looking at integrators and they're doing the research and looking for the best partner, what kind of questions can they ask to try to find the right the right integrator who can rise up to that task.
Right. Those are good ones because, as we all know, the integrator community is big. There's a large number, and there's a lot of very, very good integrators out there. People that we compete with all the time, and there's they're good, we're good, but the questions that we need to make sure of that get asked is, first of all, don't just look at the price. Look at their track record. Try to ask the client, or have the client ask the integrator, hey, can you give me some references? Can you somebody who has been in my situation, somebody who I'm asking you to do a 9-month project in 3 months. Let me talk to somebody else who has been put you in that same position. But the other thing too is also to make sure that the client asks to talk to and has to be aware of the team members, the actual team members that are going to be on, because that becomes very, very key in those kind of situations. We know that that success, in something, in that kind of an endeavor, the probability of success goes way up if in the case of Malisko, if we're assigning our trained killers, our guys that have 10 years experience, 15 years experience, the guys who have the scars on their back, the guys who have been through this, so they know both how it can work successfly, but also know how a project like that can go south very, very quickly, and that becomes very, very painful. So it's very important for a client to, as they're going through the whole vetting process of integrators, is to really ask, okay, so who are you going to put on this project? Who's going to be the lead? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Who's going to be involved in the startup? Who's going to be involved in the commissioning? What kind of documentation? What kind of internal quality procedures do you have? What kind of project engineering procedures do you have? What kind of continuous improvement procedures do you have? And what policies do you follow? Oh, and while we're talking about it, what kind of internal safety training do you have and awareness? And see what that all brings up is, and as I sit here listening to myself, I start to think, hey, wait a minute, this is all what being a CSIA certified integrator and a CSIA certified member is all about, because what I'm describing is all part of best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, how do I lead into this, and what kind of questions should I ask? And I'm thinking, well, like this sounds like the best practices, so we're definitely on the same wavelength. So how does maybe give our viewers and listeners a short description of maybe what the best practices are, and how did they help you sculpt your business processes?
Okay, the CSIA best practices, it's a tool. Okay, it's a tool, it's a guideline, and the title of it, best practices, pretty well sums it up. What the best practices is, it's an accumulation of guidelines, policy, recommended items to follow. Best practices it's not a cookbook. Okay, I can tell you that right now. It's not a cookbook. It's not somewhere where an integrator can go in and just say, okay, well, I'm gonna copy these 50 different documents, and all of a sudden I've magically got all my SOPs. No, what it does, it doesn't tell you how to do it. It tells you, okay, if you're going to be a good integrator, if you're going to be a good business person, if you're going to be a good a professional service provider to your client in the area of integration, then these are the topics you need to discuss, or you need to talk about. And when you go through them, when you look at it, not just covers project engineering, quality practices and that, but it even gets into the parts of, okay, how do you do financial management? How do you do company planning? Do you have a business strategy? Do you have even things like, hey, do you have a succession plan in place? Again, it's not telling you what you should do. A cookbook on exactly what you should do, but it says from a financial standpoint, from a training standpoint, from a project execution standpoint, from a quality standpoint, you should in your own way have something in place that defines how you run your business. And what the CSIA best practices does is it says, okay, well, here's at least a checklist. It's a long checklist, but it's a checklist. And then you go through, or an integrator goes through and checks off each one of the categories that best practices covers. And what we have found is that when you do that at the end of the whole sequence, it becomes very, very straightforward to become certified. And that certification is almost like that gold medal that gets pinned to your chest on your uniform that says, I am certified, and I do meet best practices, and therefore I have the inherent ability now, as long as I follow my procedures, I have the inherent ability to provide a high degree of being able to provide you, Mr. Client or Miss Client, a successful project.
Absolutely. I think the best practices, you summed them up really greatly. I think the best practices, like you said, are a checklist that will really look at, really deep inside of a business. And maybe you'll agree with this, is that it gives the client assurance that you're a really sound, structured business and not, a one-person shop working out of their basement, right? And so anybody can look like an engineer, look like an integrator with a laptop and a cell phone and a website, but I think the best practices really kind of fills that out nicely to say, hey, we're a real business and we're going to be here tomorrow. And if you have to call me at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going to answer the phone. We're still going to be here, right?
Correct. And one of the other parts, Tony, that I think is really critical to share with other integrators and with clients is the fact that the best practices is extremely scalable in the sense that in order to meet best practices, you don't have to be a $25 million a year integrator. When Malisko Engineering first received its certification, from a headcount standpoint and a dollar standpoint, we were much smaller. Mm-hmm. But we were complimented in the sense that the auditor told us that we run our company like any $25 or $50 million a year integrator, and so we had all of the procedures in place so we could take care of our client base. So that's a message that should be carried to clients as well as integrators, that you can you don't have to be one of the big boys in order to meet all the criteria for our best practices.
Right, and really, and conversely, it's probably for an emerging integrator that it will help you become perhaps a $25 million integrator, right? It's going to help you grow, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I know when we first went through the best practices procedure in preparing for our first audit, I have to admit, there were a number of issues that we already had covered, but as we went through it, we went like, okay, this is interesting. Yeah, okay, training. Yeah, we need to be more formal on training. Our project engineering and project execution, it's about 80%. We need to make it 100%. Those are just two examples. Mm-hmm. And over the years, what's happened is CSIA with the Best Practices Committee, they go ahead and every several years they go through basically the process of, okay, how can we make this better? How can we make best practices better? How can we address the current and projected future needs of the integrator community and make it relevant to our clients. So it really is a process that even CSIA continues to go through and make the best practices and even the checklist relevant to what are the needs of the client in today's atmosphere, as well as the atmosphere in years to come.
Right, right. So I think that maybe kind of wrap that up. We can all get geeky about best practices and all of that, but really kind of comes down to the client is it really means like lower risk for them, right? To work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because the last thing a client wants to do is to get 4, 5, 6 months into a project and then realize, wait a minute, this is not panning out the way I'd hoped. And I wish I would have, I wish I could turn back the hands of time and go back to, this other pathway, because I'm realizing now that, well, maybe I should have selected that certified CSIA integrator because, I'm not seeing the documentation. I'm not seeing the follow-up. I'm not seeing the scheduling that I thought I would. I assumed I would. And so, yes, best practices are extremely relevant, and we're starting to see literally an RFP crossed my desk last week where one of the items in there, a line item was the integrator is required to be a CSIA certified member.
Outstanding. And that's the goal. Certainly CSI certified, the certification is not as well known as an ISO certification, but that's great to hear that the certification is becoming valued by the industries.
Yeah, it made me happy because we qualify.
Excellent. Well, let's back up a little bit now here. So how did you get here, Steve? Did you want to be a control systems integrator when you grew up?
I lost a bet. No. What happened? What happened was I've always been fascinated by in the areas of electricity. As I was growing up, and then when I went to college, I decided, I didn't want to build bridges. I didn't want to, slop around in concrete or anything like that. But because electrical engineering or electricity fascinated me, I went into electrical engineering. But then as I went through my college career, I seemed to gravitate towards, control theory and towards actually seeing something happen. I mean, let's face it, in the world of electrical engineering, it's hard to see little electrons flow around, at the speed of light. But I could really get excited about, turning on a 10 horsepower motor and varying the speed of it and watching an agitator, slow down and speed up and, watch levels and watch temperatures and watch pressures. And it was something I could get my hands on, and then taking it one step further, there's nothing better, to me, I get excitement out of seeing something, go off the end of the production line and get loaded into a semi-tractor trailer, and I know it's going off to a grocery store or to a distribution center or someplace like that. That's how I got involved in it.
Excellent. So where did you go to school, and did you get you must have got a degree then in electrical engineering then, and then somehow found controls engineering, or?
No, I went to school at Colorado State University, played football there, got a double E degree. But again, while at the time, and I'm, you can tell from the color of my hair, I've been around for a while, but back in the 70s, most people were gravitating towards, companies like Motorola, Texas Instrument, Intel. Me, I just developed this fascination for controls and being able to see things be produced on a grand scale. And so I ended up gravitating towards the first job I got was at the Ralston Purina Company. I was their corporate engineering's first process controls engineer back in the late 70s. And so it was very, very much in its infancy. Back then there were not too many, unless you worked for a big chemical company. People outside of chemical companies and petroleum companies really did not know what a controls engineer was all about. So I was kind of out there, blazing a trail. I wasn't doing it deliberately; it just happened, and it kind of grew from there.
So how do you tell people what you do? How do you explain to a layperson what controls engineering is and what system integration and automation is?
Yeah, well, I changed my approach after I got repeated deer in the headlights stare. What I do now is I say, well, yeah, that cable TV program called How It's Made. Oh yeah, I know that. Well, do you ever when they're making something called paint or a food product or anything like that, when the operator goes up to a screen and starts punching on the screen, to make the equipment run or to enter in a parameter, you see that? Oh yeah, I see that. Well, all the programming and all the design of the specialized computers that go behind the scenes to actually then execute the commands that the operator's putting in, that's what we do. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I get it. Well, that's the way I describe it. Because what we do, Tony, in a lot of respects is so abstract. It's even within the, when I talk within, say, the engineering, I say, for instance, I'm a registered PE. So I'm a member of the National Society of Professional Engineers, Missouri Society of Professional Engineers. I'm registered in 5 different states to practice engineering. And it's interesting, Tony, that when I talk to other engineers, some of these are career engineers, and I try to describe to them, these guys with engineering backgrounds, what integration is all about, I almost get the deer in the headlights stare. So and I'm not, and the reality is what we do, even though we take for granted, it is highly specialized. And there's a lot of, I'll tell you, within the integrated community, I have a lot of respect for, all my compatriots, because they have a lot of technical knowledge. They've dedicated themselves to the profession of integration and manufacturing automation. And yet what we do, it's a part of everyone's lives, one form or another, but very few people understand what we really do.
Right. Yeah. And maybe it's a little easier now to describe since automation now is in the headlines. People are talking about, how its impact on the economy and labor market and things like that. So maybe it's a little more in the public awareness or public eye here. At this
I think it will become even more, especially with, the recent tax changes and now the incentive for companies to make investments. And right now there are a number of people within the industry who are saying that right now manufacturers are going to realize their greatest impact to the bottom line by embracing manufacturing automation, which is pretty exciting for our industry.
Excellent. So, well, we'll kind of wind down here now. Let's talk to the young engineers out there, or maybe even students out there that are thinking about, not an excitement of trying to track electrons traveling through a wire because they can't see it. So what would you tell a student or an engineer type of person who, what should they do? Why is this cool? And why should they, or what sort of skills should they start to develop? Because there's really, I've Googled it. There's not many degrees out there in system integration or controls in engineering as far as like actual degrees. It seems like all the members that I know took a long and winding path to get here. And so my understanding is that you guys aren't really hiring people right out of school. You're hoping somebody has several years of experience.
Well,
so it's hard to find these people, right?
Well, actually, Tony, no, actually, over the last several years, we've hired a number of people right out of school.
Oh, okay.
And we found, in some cases it's worked out very, very well. What I would say, back to your original question, though, Tony, what I would say is that, students in college who are, let's say, for instance, who've already studied, and let me just focus, I'm going to just focus on electrical engineering for right now, that what they should do is they should consider taking like controls classes, because a number of colleges and universities, and I'll use Colorado State University as a good example. They actually have now curriculum where they have the controls classes, but then senior projects, and we've been involved with the senior project there where it's actually industry oriented. Now, Colorado State University, Fort Collins, Colorado, home of New Belgium Brewing, and Odell's about 20 miles away. Oscar Blue is about 40 miles away. They're kind of the beer, the Napa Valley of beers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what's happened is over the last several years, Malisko Engineering has been involved with their fermentation and brewing science program, where we've been involved with them actually building their test breweries, and we're actually involved in helping them build their microbrewery in their student center. Now, the cool part about that is that the senior project that students have been involved with over the past 2 years is helping design and program those breweries. Now, if you stop and think about how cool is that, to be involved in, developing, understanding P&IDs, understanding controls programming, understand HMI, understand networks, understand and be exposed to security, be exposed to historians, transaction managers, reporting, real-time and historic trends. I mean, this has all been something that's evolved over the years at Colorado State University. Other universities are doing the same thing. That they're finally, say within the last 10 years, coming to a point to where they understand that there is this need for offering that part of the engineering curriculum. Okay, and it's not just in the electrical engineering, because we've hired over the past 10 years, we've hired people straight out of school, chemical engineering degrees, industrial engineering degrees, electrical engineering degrees. The vast majority have been double E degrees, but the fact of the matter is that we have hired them out of school, and what happens is they have to, they have to want to try at least get into this industry. Some are still with us, 10 plus years. Others have come and gone saying, you know what, guys, we can do this, but I'm an electrons person. I do want to I want to see those electrons and chase those electrons, in the wire. So, integration is not really for me. Okay. But it's at least now a curriculum that a lot of universities are making as a mainstream.
That's great. That's great to hear. And like I said, back to your further point, or your previous point about them actually getting their hands dirty, which sounds great. It sounds like they're really getting some real life experience and helping those existing businesses. It seems like a lot of times where, in school you have a group project, but it's not really real. It's a fake company that you're working on.
Correct.
I know in my marketing degree, we didn't really do a real marketing plan. It was for this fake company out there for the students actually to get real hands-on experience.
Great. Yeah. And I would encourage, and in fact, as an aside, I even, for the past 15, 18 years, I do high school career days too, where I go in and on their career day, I talk about engineering, and, the practical, what I do is I talk about the fact that no matter what discipline of engineering, whatever school you decide you want to go to at college, make sure that they give you the ability to do actual hands-on, because that's extremely valuable. So yes, it's becoming more and more mainstream, and so I think it's going to help to provide the integration community with new talent, as guys like me with white hair, start to look at retirement.
Steve, it's been so great to talk to you. I really appreciate you taking this time. Malisko Engineering, Malisko.com. Maybe just as we're ending here, your name is not spelled how your company is, and I'm guessing why, but maybe explain that.
Yeah, well, thank you. The name of the company is the phonetic spelling of my last name, and so as we started the company, my wife and I did back in 1994. We looked at doing that, and that's what we did. I spent the better part of my adult life correcting people how to pronounce it, how to spell it, and so we just tried to simplify it, being client oriented.
Absolutely. Well, you're not hard to find on Google, so that's a good sign, right? Especially with the unique spelling. So
Yeah.
either way. Well, very good. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Any parting words for us here as we wrap this up?
I guess the only thing is that manufacturing is a great tool to help clients improve their quality, improve their throughput, improve their consistency. Any clients out there, look at it as a tool to help you add more to your bottom line. That's it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.